So you came in with a plan. You had a bunch of things that were listed, everything from community policing, enhancing training, all of that. What did you do best?
Well, I believe law enforcement has changed from the time I was appointed, and some of that change is good. However, there's some things that's been asked that we must recognize can't be done overnight. So I believe having that strategic plan in place helped us transition from where we were before to where we are now, and it's a guide and a plan to move forward.
So you felt like that really held, that was a pivotal part of your time as chief, is having that plan and following it as the rest of the world changed?
Absolutely, and a lot of the things we had in place before or we were working on, and it's something we were looking to do, but again, not necessarily events in Grand Rapids, but nationwide, we've seen a change in law enforcement and the direction law enforcement's going. And again, I don't think that that's a negative. There was need for some change, but here at the Grand Rapids Police Department, we had already started many of those things, and they had been in place for years. So what the strategic plan was laid out an outline for the department to be able to follow as we move forward.
What was the greatest challenge? Was that the change in climate, as you had mentioned?
Yeah, I think 2020 was a challenge for everyone. I mean, we had a global pandemic that affected not just the police department, but the world. So we had to deal with that, making sure we kept our officers safe and the community safe from that. But again, events that occurred outside of Grand Rapids, we ended up having to address them here locally, and that was a big challenge for us. And dealing with the pandemic, the amount of violence that occurred in 2020, and also the civil unrest, it was a challenging year.
So that was the greatest challenge, navigating all of that.
Yes, all at once.
And you made history when you became chief as the first African-American chief for the Grand Rapids Police Department. What impact do you think that has had on the community and the department?
I would hope it shows that, again, now we're in the 2021 and anything's possible, and maybe it was long overdue. I will forever be grateful to City Manager Mark Washington for appointing me the chief of police, and I fully embrace the significance of being an African American as a police chief. It was a significant appointment. It was the first time an African American was made police chief, and I'll be forever grateful for City Manager Mark Washington for entrusting me and the support he has shown over the last 2 years as chief of police. I think it shows the community at a time when recruitment is tough that more minorities can be involved and come to the level of a police chief. So that's the biggest significance I see. When I started on the department, there were very few, if any, minorities across the board that were in supervisory management positions, and now we have an African American police chief.
You started your career here, correct? You started?
I started at Grand Valley for about 6 months, but the majority of my 34 years, actually all of my 34 years, has been here at the Grand Rapids Police Department.
What's it like to finish here?
Great. The community, outstanding community, a lot of support from the community, and the men and women that I was thinking about, it's probably up in the thousands of sworn and professional staff people that I've had the honor to work with in the police department and throughout the city over my 34 years. The commitment to professionalism and doing the right thing for the right reasons has been a hallmark of all my colleagues that I have worked with.
Any emotions when it comes to making this announcement and it feeling real, I'm sure, today?
Yes, it is, and I think as we get closer to the time, it'll probably be more. There's a lot of emotions, but it is time now to find a new chief, and for the chief to come in and put his or her stamp on the department. I believe we've overcome a lot. We're in a better place than what we were a year ago, but there's still work to be done.
Why now?
Biggest reasons family, and it's time. After 34 years, I'm very proud of every one of those years, but it's time to move on. And again, I believe that policing has changed. The whole criminal justice system is changing, and it's time for someone else to come in to take us to that next level and keep this department and the men and women providing leadership and direction. So it continues to be one of the most outstanding police departments in the country.
What do you hope for your successor? What advice do you have for Mark Washington and those in charge of picking the next chief?
Make sure that the community has input on what they're looking for the chief. Also for the police department, they're a stakeholder in this also, providing him information on what they're looking for in the next chief. I think that's crucial in picking the next person, to make sure everyone's on the same page and are willing to keep the department moving forward in a positive direction so that we have the outcomes that we're looking for.
And finally, it's a toughie but important. What will be your legacy?
I believe 2020 was very challenging for the reasons that I stated: the pandemic, the social unrest, the unprecedented level of gun violence that occurred in the city. Again, I think we're in a better place in 2021 than what we were before that. I don't know if anyone, I certainly didn't predict that we would have a 2020 like we did. And I won't say getting through 2020 because there is still work to be done. But again, I think we're in a better place than what we were a year ago.
Amazing. Justin, I'm going to have you take a quick picture for social, I promise that. And then you're free to go. So again, retirement, fishing with your son,
Yes.
getting to enjoy your daughter's senior year.
Yes. And my wife, I can't leave her out. Being able to spend time with her. She has been extremely supportive of not only my police career, but the last 2 years of being chief. So really, what it really comes down to is time, but a lot of that is family.